CSS where you can actually give it variables to say, like, my link color is, you know, pound 12344 something, and well, you couldn't really say it's that, but you know, this is what my color is, and then my background color is this, and my border color is this, and then you just use those within the CSS, and then when you compile that, it creates the CSS tables that have replaced those variables with it. So if you need to change from red to blue, you could just change it within your variables, and it would recompile and it would automatically change it in all those different places. It actually works with different kinds of HTML markup. It was designed to work with HTML5. So it works nicely with that. You'll also notice there's a place that I'll show you shortly where they're giving certain examples in the docs of how you would set up, and it works with that kind of markup. But if you then actually look at their examples that they have in their source code, it gives you different kinds of markup that you can use. So the important thing here is the CSS classes that it uses. And in some cases, you do need to do it in the sense that you've got a CSS class that, you know, wraps around something, and then it's contained within that. But whether those are divs that it's wrapping, or it's spans that are wrapping, or certain other things, doesn't matter. That you can do that however it works better for you.
This is a demonstration of Ustream Producer.
So this is really all you need to create something that does Bootstrap. And again, this would be within the template itself. You just add in these two files, the Bootstrap min CSS and the Bootstrap min JS. And at its very basic level, that will give you a Bootstrap file, because that gives you access then to the CSS classes, definitions, and the JS. You would actually, I am missing on here, you do need to have JavaScript also running. So you'd either have to load it in there or have it already running from somewhere else. Now there are a couple places that you can see some things online. Let me boy, it takes up half with all my good stuff up there, doesn't it?
This is a demonstration
Let's see if we can
of
get this.
Ustream Producer.
It looks great on mine when I'm at a normal resolution. It's these projectors that do. I'm just going to try to change that resolution. Let me just see if it gets all really wacky on me. That is just such the weirdest resolution on there. That says the best one. I'm going to scale it. Oh, well, hey, wait a minute. No wonder. Let's try that one.
This is a demonstration of Ustream Producer.
It's still a little bit. I should have. I was just going to get rid of all my accessibility.
This is a demonstration of Ustream Producer.
Well, I could do this too. Okay. That's still got a few things though, doesn't it? Didn't realize I had so many things on there. Okay, so that looks a little better, and it looks like the font on there isn't all the jagged edges and stretched wacky. Okay, so this is Bootstrap.
Ustream Producer.
You can get to this just by putting in twitter.github.com/bootstrap, and from here you have the ability to download just the necessary files to actually run it, which would be the JS and the CSS. Or you can go to their GitHub project here with that link, and that will let you download all of the source, which has the less files, And this, actually,
This
because
is a
this
demonstration of Ustream Producer.
I did pull this up from online, but you can also, if you download what they have at GitHub, this is what you get. So you just go, you know, Bootstrap / localhost or whatever you have to do for that, Bootstrap / docs, and this is what you actually get. And you can go through here. It tells you, talks about how you would actually set it up and use it, and then goes through and has different examples of some of the things that you would be doing and using it for. And we'll go through some of this a little bit later. But it'll actually show you different things of how you would set stuff up. So it's helpful as something that you can use as kind of like a style guide. And like I said, it's not really so much an HTML style guide, though you could follow it. But their HTML tends to be very
this is a demonstration
very
of
basic,
Ustream
so it doesn't
Producer.
include things that normally you would want to include. So just because they leave off legends, or they leave off, you know, alt text, or they leave off certain things like that, doesn't mean that's what you need to do. So use your good HTML and then add their CSS classes to it. And then there's the github.com/bootstrap/Twitter. And this is their
This is a
actual
demonstration of Ustream
site
Producer.
that has everything in it. So you can just go over and click on downloads over here and get to a place where you can just download the whole thing. If you're used to using GitHub, you can just clone it, bring it down like that, and you're all set. And that will actually give you everything. Just technical thing, unlike Joomla, where we use the current master is the trunk as we're continuing. With them, their master is their last release. And they put whatever work they're developing on in a WIP file. So if you want the newest thing that they're actually working on, you go to the WIP. If you want to get the last release that they did, then you just use their master. So. Okay. Let me just go back to my PowerPoint here. Okay. So the one other thing I guess I want to show you here.
This is a demonstration
back
of
again.
Ustream Producer.
Is that went funky again, didn't it? Yeah, undoubtedly. It's just it's getting after me for that.
This is a demonstration
Guess I just don't want to
of
switch
Ustream
between the two of them
Producer.
too much. Wait a minute, I want it to be in the other one. That still looks like that's funky, doesn't it? That's not, it's just not staying. Yeah, well, it wasn't in PowerPoint. That's what's funky about it.
This is a demonstration of
Let me
Ustream
get out of this for a
Producer.
minute. Whoa, now it's really funky. That's not what I wanted. I wanted here. And I lost what I was in there, so let's go to
This is a demonstration of Ustream
this
Producer.
one was the one I wanted to see. Okay, so this is another thing. This is kyleledbetter.com/Jui, Jui. And what we're using in Joomla is a version of Bootstrap. So it's Bootstrap plus a few things. So we're calling that Jui, so that you know it's not just Bootstrap. And we'll,
None of this will be on
This is a
Joomla.org.
demonstration of Ustream Producer.
not these things. I mean, the Bootstrap things are just Bootstrap stuff. And this is just an example of some of the stuff that we'll probably end up putting this somewhere as well. But this is, I just wanted to show you, is a couple of mock-ups that Kyle made of some of the things that people can actually do with using Bootstrap. So that
This is a demonstration
this first one just kind of looks like the
Ustream
Bootstrap, but if we
Producer.
go to like a blog, he's just mocked up a couple of different ways that you can use the Bootstrap CSS to make it look in a certain way. And what he'd like to do is actually develop it so that this is the kind of thing that we have up in our docs, and that people can actually put extra stuff up too, so that we can have examples of different ways that you can do it. But this is just kind of a first draft while we are working on it. Right now our concentration has been on actually getting it working in Joomla.
These aren't really.
This is straight.
This isn't Joomla.
This is not Joomla.
HTML
This-
saying here's how you might.
This is how you might do it. These are just fake mock-ups.
Yeah.
Right.
But 3.0, when it comes out next week, we'll have Bootstrap in it.
This
Yes.
is a demonstration of Ustream Producer.
Not this particular thing. I'll show you some pieces in a minute. I don't want to take all of Paul's thunder.
I'm getting confused. So.
Yeah.
These are just demo layouts.
These are demo layouts.
I
Andy,
understand that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Andy, you can show whatever you want.
Joomla will be a Bootstrap.
Joomla will be bootstrapped. This doesn't happen to be Joomla. These are just a series of mock-ups that he created oops, stop that.
This is a demonstration of Ustream
So that like if you were
Producer.
doing a community thing, you might want to do something like this. And obviously you could make it any way you wanted to, but he was just showing some mock-ups of kind of the things that you would be able to do with it by basically just using the class names, and then Bootstrap will take care of the rest. Or in our cases, what's really going to happen, we keep talking about, oh, Bootstrap will then take care of it. But what will really happen is that the template developer will really take care of it, because
Producer.
you might have a class in Bootstrap that says, you know, X, Y, or Z, and then the template developer is going and he's putting all of his CSS on what he wants to happen when you have something like that. Like whether you've got this nice little line going around it or not, or maybe he wants to do something different with that and make it thicker. And so you as a component developer has just put the regular class in here, and then the template person has added whatever CSS he wants to
demonstration of
his
Ustream
versions of
Producer.
you know, Bootstrap, so that yours will just go right along with it. And will work to match in with what he's got for the rest of it. Yep.
So is this basically, you know, standardizing a set of classes that everyone uses when building, so that when
Yes.
I move it over to a different theme, it already has all the right classes?
Right, and it's a similar kind of a thing that before, you know, if you were to look at core Joomla and you wanted it to match, and you know, you could look at the way
is a
that the
demonstration
layouts
of
were set up
Ustream
there, and you
Producer.
say, oh, okay, so they use this class and that class and that class, so I'm going to use that when I create my layout, because then it'll go. The thing is that Joomla only uses, you know, these 4 or 5 different things, and you've got all these other fancy stuff over here. So what Bootstrap does is it has additional stuff so that people can be using that. And that's one of the reasons that we've got Jui, is that even with the stuff that Bootstrap had that you can pick from, that we don't use in core,
Demonstration of Ustream Producer.
we're going to be trying to add things to that people can then use, so that you would have a place to go to where you could find where that is kind of defined. And so that means that you would be able to get things from there, and then the other developers would too. It would not mean that everybody's sites would look alike, because what template developers can then do is they can go to the GUI site and say, oh, okay, here are all the different things that are available that might get used. How do I want to style all of those? And then they style them the way they want to. And then when your thing goes, your component goes in, like I keep saying, you know, it should flow right in and look appropriate to that, with rounded corners or not rounded corners or blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
On Thursday, when we click that button to 3.0, what happens to the 2.5 templates that are already in there?
We will not be touching any 2.5 templates, which means that they will still be in there.
And they'll still look the same?
Well, they won't really work.
Of Ustream Producer.
That's what I wondered. So we'll have a nightmare.
You're going to have a little nightmare on your hands. Yeah,
Okay.
we did not, one of the reasons that actually that we changed Bees to call it, was called Bees 3 in 3.0, was that, well, we're getting rid of Atomic and we're getting rid of Bees 5. We were just going to keep one of the bees and then adding a new one in. And we figured if anybody had created a template, it was still going to be there. And then we realized, well, you know, there might be a few people actually, you know, using the default template, Bees 2.0. None of you guys probably. But we didn't want to overlay that. So we called it, so we said, well, we'll just call it Bees 3. And we did it like just before the beta came out, switched the name on it. And the other thing that does is you'll be able to look at Bees 3 and what it's done, and you'd still have the original Bees 2 in there. So you would have some comparison to actually look at and see some of the differences. Now, obviously, the Bees 2.0 didn't have all the overrides in it because it was using the core things. But for that comparison, you could always look at the real core ones. But we did take the core layouts from 2.5 and we brought them over into Bees 3 with just making the differences, changes that we needed to make them actually, you know, work and show what needed to show.
But if we have a third party...
If you have a third party one, chances are it's still going to be there, and you can look and see what it looks like. But you know, if
we don't really want to upgrade right away if we're not ready for this.
Absolutely do. Yeah, don't hit that little button without having taken a copy and put it down local someplace and hit the button there to see what happens. You have when you go and you hit that button to update right now, it will not update to 3.0.
Oh.
The way that it's set up on there is there's some options.
Demonstration of
the
Ustream
little, you know, the little options button there. If you go in and you look at that, it has parameters in there as to whether you want to be doing only updating to LTSs or LTRs, whatever, LTSs. And so that means that the only time when you hit that and it would tell you go to a 3 as opposed to one of the 2 versions is once we get 3.5 coming out. When we get 3.5 coming out, then it will actually start recommending that you update to it. Right now, if you go in there, the default is to say to only go to the LTSs. You can change that. If you've decided, you know, you've got this little 5-page site, you want to try it and see what's going on right now, you can actually change that to say, I want to go to the short-term ones. And it will then tell you, okay, hey, we got 3.0 out, let's go for it. There are additional warnings before you do it. Sort of read some of the stuff that's going on there because there are a few changes that you need to make sure your host can handle. Like it must be 5.3. You must have the magic quotes off. You know, a couple of little technical things that are required in order to go to 5.3. I'm sorry, to go to 3.0. And we're working on getting some warnings. Plus the fact that, you know, your extensions may not then work, or you have to be prepared that your template is going to break on you. So you don't want to do this on this big cool site that you have that has to be up all the time.
Ustream Producer.
Always make sure you try it somewhere else first.
On a development server, if you have a big cool site,
yes.
How much rework is involved there besides the comps?
You mean besides just the layout kind of issue things, or?
Yeah, pretty much.
It's mostly It's mostly the layout, depending on what extensions you have. If you've got extensions that
Ustream producer
were built to run with the 1.6, 2.5 stuff, then there are some changes that have to happen to them. If they use deprecated parts of the API, and we've gotten rid of it, then that won't work anymore. Those are all logged, so you could check your logs to see what you're coming up with that says they're using deprecated stuff.
This is a demonstration of Ustream producer.
There is a list of things that we're putting in the wiki that people should be checking out, so that assuming they're not using anything that's deprecated, one of the major two of the things that they'll need to look at. One is looking at I'm going technical here. So if they've directly extended JModel, JView, or JController, they have to change that to say JView Legacy, JView
Ustream producer.
JView Legacy, JModel Legacy, and JController Legacy. If they've used the JModel admin or JModel list or something, they don't have to worry about it because that's taken care of further down. But if they were jumping directly to those, they will have to put that in. We have also backported that to 2.5, so I forget the exact release, like 2.5.3, 2.5.4, somewhere in there. We put that in there so that those will also run on 2.5. So if you make the change for 3.0, it'll still work on 2.5, but it would not work on 2.5.1, anything like that. So you'd need to do that piece of it. That's we're bringing in jQuery, but MooTools is still there. So it is going to be much less difficult to do than it was to move to 1.5. It's not going to be quite a click, oh look, it's all set. But it's going to be a lot less difficult than it was to go to 1.6 or 2.5 from 1.5. However, if what you've got is a bunch of extensions that were written for 1.0 and squeaked through to 1.5 and now just barely run under 2.5, those probably aren't going to work because they'll be using a lot of deprecated stuff. So that's where it really kind of depends on which extensions, and what we're really trying to do is get extension developers to get their extensions ready for 3.0. And we have really tried to make it so that they would be able to do a single code stream. So as long as they can handle having, requiring their users to be on current 2.5 versions, then they can run the same one, would work in both.
Ustream producer.
But that's pretty much what we're aiming at, is that that we'd be able to have the same extension run on 3.0 and on 2.5, but it would only be able to run on, or it might only be able to run on a current 2.5, not every 2.5 that's out there. And if you've got a lot of custom thing, then again, it's going to depend on how you wrote to custom. But again, check the logger to see
demonstration of Ustream producer.
What deprecated things you're using. That would be the biggest thing. And then the legacy change to make. Oh.
What does it mean to only update LTS? What is that?
Okay, the way the release cycle works is that we have long-term support and short-term support releases. So when we go the current cycle, let's say 3.0, that's going to be a short-term cycle. That's going to last for 6 months. And then in 6 months, we're going to come out with 3.1, and we're not going to be supporting 3.0 anymore. Anybody who moves to 3.0 has to be willing to upgrade to 3.1 come March or April or whenever that is. And then 6 months after that, well, there's still some talk about whether we go to 3.2 or 3.5 at that point, but 6 months after that, there's going to be a new release that comes out, and they have to be willing to move to that we will,
This is a
after we do a couple of these, we go to a
Ustream
3.5 version, which we call a long-term release, and that one we keep for 18 months. So that's the long-term release, and that's the stable one. Once it gets into there, ideally we don't make any changes to it other than minor bug fixes and certainly any security things, so that you know that it's going to be there. What we've been happening with 2.5 is we've been backporting things to make it easier to go to the next release. With the next version, we may try to do that.
Ustream producer.
Maybe extend some of those short term long enough to keep doing the backporting so that when we actually get to the 3.5, we are bringing out we know what's going on with 4.0, so we won't have to do any backporting anymore. But that's the thing, is that that's the really, each 3.0, 3.1, whatever, those are all going to be stable releases. They're just short term. They're not going to be sticking around.
So when you hit the button that says update LTS, that says only update.
This is a
to
demonstration
3.5,
of
right?
Ustream
But
Producer.
It would not work if I hit it on Thursday.
If you hit it on Thursday, it's going to be going out and it's still going to be checking. If you say that the LTSs, it's still going to be, what it will find after that is if there's a 2.5.8 comes out, it's going to suggest you update it to 2. It's going to be continuing. If you use leave it at the defaults, when we come out with new 2.5 releases, it's going to be suggesting you update those for the next 18 months or year, or however long it is till we
This
get
is a
there.
demonstration of Ustream Producer.
If you haven't touched anything, that's what it's going to be. And what it is that's not what does the update specifically. I mean, that is also telling you what's ready. So that it won't tell you it won't even tell you about 3.0. It's just gonna wait until we get 2.5.8 coming out, and then it'll say, hey, time to update to 2.5.8. Yeah. Yeah. If people in the community aren't really, if people using Joomla aren't really in the community, the local community, knowing what's going on and watching it, their updates they won't know from their updates that we just brought something else out. Yeah. Yep.
Can you just tell me what RTL is? When Kyle says Julie will fill in the missing pieces like RTL.
What RTL is right to left, and so like Hebrew or some of the Arabic languages that you read this direction.
Producer.
That Bootstrap has some of that, but didn't have everything, so we had to add some of that in there. Yeah, because we had a little more global in there than they did, I guess. So.
Will Bootstrap make it easier for us to develop our own templates? Or does that?
It could.
This
yep.
is a demonstration
because
of
it already
Ustream
has
Producer.
some of the basics that are in there. You'll develop them the same way that you always had to a certain extent. I mean the mechanics. Okay.
Hoping I could.
Yeah, actually, if you've created HTML sites before, going down to its absolutely lowest level to create a Joomla template requires about 4 lines of code in an HTML.
This is a demonstration of Ustream
Now, if you're going to do
Producer.
anything fancy, you end up having to pull this in. But
Well, I made one site in just plain Bootstrap with PHP and HTML code
yeah,
because
but you would
I
just
wanted to learn it.
yeah. Basically, what you do is you just take what would be your main HTML for your page, and you throw in what these little JDocs. Here's where I want a module. Here's where I want the component. Here's where I want another module.
And that makes your module.
And here's my header, and that makes it. Yeah.
This is a demonstration of
Okay.
Ustream Producer.
Any other questions, or shall I keep? This is good. Okay. And then just quickly to kind of look at this, and then I'll show you some of the stuff here. Is like he was showing pictures of what you could look like if you were doing a shop, or if you're doing events. And then he's getting into some of the other stuff here, but let me go back. Let me see what's going to happen when
This is a
Okay.
demonstration.
Yeah, let me see what's going to happen when I move back to my PowerPoint here. Did it die? Okay. All right. So I basically, yeah, it did do its funky thing, I think. So basically, I think I've gone over this. The CSS class names are changed, and we've now got jQuery available. And this is going to be going over some of the stuff of the way it's, God, that looks so awful.
This is a demonstration of
Yeah, I can't really get in there to change that, I don't think. Well, that you can't really see that picture at all. This actually has little colors on there so that you can see the grid. So where you've got all those ones across the top, you've got little gray bars that show you the difference. But the Bootstrap is built on a grid system. Normally, it's built with No, it's built on a thing of 12.
Of Ustream Producer.
960 grid uses 12 or 16.
Yeah, but this uses 12. Yeah, but it uses 12. It has like 20 pixels, I think, between each of them. And the way that you specify it is by using this thing called the span, so that your 4, you'd have three span 4s would fit across. 2 span 6s would fit across. And if you're doing the static system, what you want to do is you start by enclosing something called row, and then within that you would do your span, something that would be equal to 12 total. So your span 4 plus your span 6, that makes 10, and then you can do an offset of 2. So what would happen with this one is it would be like you'd have a div that's like here, and then you could skip a space, a big space, and then do another piece there. So that you've gone, a third of it, you skip a bit, and then you've got
of Ustream Producer.
the next half. So that's what you do with a static one. And along with that, you can actually nest it. And if you're doing it in a static nesting, you want your children to add up to the parent. So if you start out with your row, doing the whole thing, and then within that, we've got a span 4. Underneath that, we nest in a grouping that wants to match to that 4. So that's the span 1 and the span 3.
Is a demonstration
and then, of course, the other bit
Producer.
was the offset 2 and 6 down at the bottom, just like our other one. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so that's where you're going to get your responsive stuff when you...
Well, not on this, because this is the static piece. This is if you're doing it with a static. Sometimes there are things you don't want to go under. If you're doing the responsive stuff, this is where you're going to get it here. This is the fluid. You would do it row-fluid instead of just row.
This is a demonstration.
And then underneath that, it's the same thing. You have your span 4, and you could have an offset or not an offset, whatever. So it's just like that. So the only difference between the responsive fluid one and the one that's static is the fact that this has row fluid. And you can actually do some combining in there. Like you could have row fluid for your main big one, and then underneath it you can start doing some static rows where you wanted to make sure that these didn't split itself. Because sometimes there are times when you need it to go horizontal. There's just doesn't make sense when it goes under. The big difference technically is that with row fluid, they're doing it based on percents. And the other one there, it's a little bit different. Now, the other thing that's different with the fluid, when you're using the row fluid, if you nest underneath, because of the percents, you don't want to have the part that's underneath match to the number of rows
of Ustream Producer.
Columns, whatever, in the parent. You want it to add up to the 12 each time. So here, you can see it looks the same. We have the row fluid going on the outside. Our bottom one here is still the 2 and the 6. But when we look at the nesting that we're doing under 4, with our row fluid, you can see that we've got 3 and 9, whereas the other one we had 1 and 3. So 3 and 9 equals 12. That's our full 12 underneath that. And so that's
This is a
just doing the
demonstration of
percentages
Ustream
of the widths that
Producer.
we're doing.
Okay, so span 3, span 9, in this case, it really only applies if you're doing road fluid.
Right, right. If this, let's say we were doing row fluid for the main thing, because span 4 and span this 2 and 6 thing we're willing to have go underneath, but we wanted this top one to be, well, to stay, to not be breakable, you know, be unbreakable, and we did a row here, then we'd want that to be equal to the 4. Does that make sense? Any questions on that? Okay. Now, some of the other things, you probably can't read this at all, but they have some specifically responsive classes. One of the things that they do for responsive is the way that it will shrink in size and, you know, make the size difference, the way that it will actually drop things underneath one another. And then additionally, if you actually want to change something because of what you're in, you can use some of these responsive classes. And they're like visible phone, visible tablet, visible desktop, and then hidden phone, hidden tablet, and hidden desktop. And so what they look at is if you've got it visible on the phone, and you've got a phone, it'll show, but it won't show if you're on a tablet or a desktop. So you might want to connect that with, oh, if I'm on a phone, I want to show this little tiny icon, but then you might want to have it that if I'm on a desktop or a tablet, I want it to show this text. So what you could do is you could have visible phone just on the icon, and then you could have hidden phone on the text, or vice versa. You can use whatever combination of that makes sense for what it is that you want to show and hide, depending on what it is that you're doing.
Demonstration of Ustream Producer.
And again, those are classes, so they can go on whatever it is that you want to hide or disappear or change. Then the other thing that they do is they give you a series of what do I want to call it? Class names again, that you can use for common functions that might happen. In this particular case, if you've got text that you want to have as kind of, you know, warning text, or, you know, stop text, or this is successful, that kind of thing, just informational, you can use those particular classes. And Bootstrap has them styled specifically for, you know, like warning is gold and error is red and info is blue and success is green or gray or something. I forget which ones they are. And then muted is another one you could do, and what that does is it takes it and it makes it a much lighter color, so that you might use something like that if, you know, you're showing something that's disabled. They might mute that down, or for whatever reason you want that to fade back, you can use that. And now a template designer could then look at it and they can decide what red color they want to have as red, or if they want to have red as purple, you know, or their error as purple, whatever they want to do to it, they can do what they need to with it. You've just said, okay, this is a warning kind of a thing, that's what I want you to do with warning.
This is a demonstration of Ustream Producer.
So you probably don't really want to think about those as specifically colors, but those are more sort of meaningful things as to what's going to happen. Then they've got a few little classes that you might just need for utility, for moving certain things around when you're trying to get your layout right. If you use like float left and float right and image right, image whatever, they use pull right and pull left. So that's what your floating thing is. And they use clear fix as their class for needing to do the full clear kind of a thing. Then they've got a whole set of things set up for tables. And again, you know, you don't use tables as much as you used to, because you certainly don't use them for layout. But there are times, especially in Joomla's back end, for the kind of stuff that we do, that you're going to be using tables. All those manager kinds of things. They're tables of information, so they're going to be tables. And you
This is
always
a
sign the class
demonstration
table
of
for a table.
Ustream Producer.
And then you can decide you want it to do the zebra stripes. If you do, you just also have the class on the table that's called class striped, and it'll automatically do the striping for you. You can do it as table condensed, and these you can just add you can have as many of those as you want onto the same table. You just keep adding the classes, and that will get rid of some of the padding that they had. And again, the template designer may decide they want to do some stuff a little differently, but this gives the basic on it.
Of Ustream
And
Producer.
border, do you want to have all the borders around or not? And the table hover actually makes it so that if you're doing a hover going up and down the table, do you want that to be highlighting that row as you're going up and around it? So you see, you don't have to worry about doing all this figuring out, because then you don't have to go on each table and figure out what's right, what's an odd, and what's an even. It'll handle. So
this is a demonstration of
it has the same kind of thing that
Producer.
you can put on the row classes that you were putting on the text for success, error, warning, or info. And then on forms, they do a bunch of stuff with forms, because a lot of, especially with what we're doing, you do a lot with forms because you're trying to get information from people, and that's kind of how you interact with them. They do it with it's a standard setup, so that you've got a label here with the input. If it's right to left, it gets flipped around.
This is a demonstration of Ustream Producer.
And then they have a number of different optional things that you can do to change that. You can, if you want to have it go horizontally, I'm sorry, they have it with it on the top with the thing underneath like this. And you can also make it go horizontally if you enclose the whole thing in a form-horizontal. It'll make it go that way. And it gives you some additional things that you can put in here. I won't necessarily go all over them all, where you're wrapping certain controls in things in order to make them go horizontal instead of up on top of each other. And you can also use that kind of thing if you've got a number of actions on the bottom and how you want those to actually be displayed. And you can use the form classes to designate that. Yes?
Do you put that on the form tag or in a div around it?
Wherever I say wrap right here, that's where you'd put a div or something around it.
Or what about,
This is a demonstration of
That would go within
Ustream
on the
Producer.
form statement itself. Yep. And they also, when you do input, make sure you put the input type it actually is. Like this is a typed text, that kind of thing, because they use that. Yep.
Are they doing anything for data visualization, bringing up as charts or graphs?
No, I don't think so. No. I've used high charts. I've been doing some stuff with that.
This is a demonstration of Ustream Producer.
Look at high charts, and then high roller. High charts is JavaScript. So if you like running in JavaScript, you can just do that. If you don't, do high roller, and that is a PHP wrapper that goes around it. I was able to create a couple of just quickie little wrappers on those and install them as libraries in Joomla. So, I mean, I added like XML files, and you can install it as a library in Joomla.
This is a demonstration
Yep, the manifest
of Ustream
XML file.
Producer.
Just put a manifest XML file for each of those. They're all in GitHub. So I think they're in GitHub. They're downloadable someplace, I forget.
Is high charts open source?
I believe they were both open source. They were all available for playing with. Yeah, is that okay? Then when you're doing the radio and checkboxes are always sort of the funky
Ustream
ones.
Producer.
How are they going to work? And so what you want to do with those is you want to add the class of radio or the class of checkbox along with being the type. And that's on the label, so that the input has got the type of it, but on the label actually specify that this is going to be for a radio or for a checkbox. And then if you want it to be in line as opposed to one over the other, then you can add the dot in line to the label as well.
This is a demonstration of Ustream Producer.
And one of the other things that's kind of cool that you can do, and you'll see this in the login, we're doing it, is you can append or prepend different information on it that you want to on here. So that if you wanted, like here they're showing decimals, or if you want to have some little icon or something like that, you can use this form to just be able to put that on, and it'll.
This is a demonstration
create it
of
for you.
Ustream Producer.
This little thing of using the where is it? Did I have that in here? I don't have it on that one. We haven't got it on the next one. Yeah. Have it on that one. Okay, you could also do it as a button. Often you have that little select thing afterwards when they're trying to, you know, add a file or do this or that. And this is how you would do it, to just be adding that right onto the thing. You'll see this in the back end of Joomla. We'll do a quick run through and I can show you some of that stuff. You can add sizings. Oh, 5 minutes?
It's 10 after 4.
Okay.
The next thing starts at 4:30 in here, so they're going to have to move stuff around.
Oh, okay. Okay.
10 minutes?
Okay. Okay. Let me just run through some stuff a little quick here. You can also add the different classes for you know, making sure it's small or large. And those span classes that you used before, you can also use those to put on them. When you're doing buttons, it's going to be, oh, that wasn't it yet. This is just some other classes that you can use. And I'll show you where you can get a lot of this information from too in a minute. So that you can add like help inline and help blocks, so that it'll just style that for you. If you want to do things that's unreadable or read-only. Buttons here are going to be similar to the other of having you always
of Ustream Producer.
Put the class PTN for button, and then PTN dash something else for a second class if you want a particular type. You can also add it to make the size in addition. The PTN block at the bottom, you would do that if you wanted it to be the whole width of the div that's in there. So you just want a great big one, you know. I think that's what Nicholas did once on a Kiva backup. I don't know if you guys remember that button one time that was the size of the screen.
Ustream Producer.
Everybody couldn't find the button for back up now, so he came out one day and it was literally, I mean it was this big and then nobody could find it. You know, that's a button. Okay, so this is just a couple of things that are different or that you would be doing in it. That before you had like behavior tooltip, now it's the Bootstrap tooltip we're using. For the drop downs, you can use, we've got this chosen, which is a jQuery thing. So you can use the form behavior.chosen select for doing that, as opposed to the other way that we were doing it. The manager table, instead of the table class of admin list, now it goes to table striped with a particular ID. And there again, if you want to hide columns for the phone, you just add that class phone hidden. Okay, I'm just going to jump real quick here.
Demonstration of Ustream Producer.
Or actually, you're going to be doing the. Maybe when you're showing 3.0, I can show some Bootstrap. Well, no, let me just show you a few things. I just want to show you some things. Okay. Okay, so this is 3.0, and let me just do my little quickie thing here.
This is a demonstration of Ustream Producer.
Okay, so this is the new 3.0. So you can see the appending and the prepending, or the appending and the prepending. The new control panel. These are little pills that you can little label pills that you can add on different things. Over here you can see how they've got the little icons that are added onto it.
This is a demonstration of Ustream Producer.
Like in the article manager here. Now here are the old icons, the old toolbar up here. Those are the buttons. You can see this has got button primary on it, which is why it looks different than the others. Here, this is one thing I hadn't really shown that I had it set up to tell you about, but I didn't have time. This is kind of cool. Over here you've got your ordering, so let's just change by ordering.
Of Ustream Producer.
And now we can say, I really want 3 to be up here.
Oh, I like that.
Okay?
That was going to be my big fan.
I'm sorry!
Oh, man. Buy me a beer and I'll show you Dragon.
And I've got the code in my I was going to show you the code for it, but so that's one of the things that's also in there that this does. The filters are over here instead of across the top. Is kind of the way that it's set up. But if you were to go into here, you could see that this is using like the different Bootstrap classes, and that's how that it's actually going.
Available as parameters that you can change from the back end. We know we put them in, but can we change them?
Change which?
Well, say red, and switch it to blue.
Yes, you create an admin template.
I mean, the template person can do what they want to, and the templates can be set.
Demonstration of Ustream Producer.
For the less, I mean, for the CSS, you mean that I want this to be blue instead of green, or that's.
Or whatever you're doing with your modules. Will those features that we're incorporating from the Bootstrap, will we be able to adjust them?
That would be working like the way that a template would be doing that. We've got a few things on the templates you can do. The problem is the place where you would normally be, where it would be really convenient to be able to do that kind of thing, is using less, because less is set up with those variables, and so if you could just go in and change that. But that has to get compiled. And so there's no reason why it couldn't really be compiled. There's a JavaScript compiler. So somebody could write a little thing that could, you change it and it recompiles your less for you right under the covers.
What do you need to recompile
Less.
What?
How do you
recompile less? There are different ways of compiling less. And there's a JavaScript called less.js that you can use. We've actually are using a PHP one within Joomla because we can do it as a build on there where we automatically goes with our normal build and automatically recompile the less for us. If you go to this original one that I mentioned, which is the twitter.github.com Bootstrap.
Ustream Producer.
And you go to, now I'm stealing Elon's thunder that she was not able to do that she wanted to. They actually have a way to do this kind of thing because you come down here and here are the links and you could actually change it and then recompile the thing to be what you wanted it to. Wouldn't that be kind of fun to be able to have something like that? So,
this is a demonstration of
and if you want to
Ustream
know
Producer.
more about less, in
Less is more.
Less is more. Yeah, if you want to know more about less, on April 13th, Joomla Day New England, I'm giving one of my talk is on using less. Less is more. Less is more. So I've already forgotten where I was on that. Oh, but this is where you can go because it talks again about the scaffolding. The grid system that I talked about. You can go in here and look at the different components for doing, here's how they do navigation, labels and badges, topography, some of the JavaScript that's in there for doing, like, again, the drop downs and the scroll spy, the tooltips, some of this other carousels are actually in there that you can how you would set the carousel up doing it. So this is stuff that we don't use a carousel within Joomla, but somebody might be wanting to do that, obviously,
This is a
with a component. So here's a way that you can
producer.
actually look at doing it through here.
So Andy, are all 12 of those, whatever you call them, add-ons, are those within Joomla?
Those are in Joomla. This is all part of Bootstrap. Yep.
So as a developer making a component, if you want a carousel, you don't have to add the JavaScript or the CSS.
You can use that. So that's there. Yeah. And David, you've had experience doing this. What are your big gotchas?
A couple questions I thought might be helpful is.
This is a demonstration of Ustream Producer.
Yes.
Like on top of Bootstrap, do we have a full wiki put together that lists all of the classes that are both in Bootstrap and GUI?
That would be a very nice thing, wouldn't that be?
As well as templates from V2 to V3.
Well, that one we definitely know we would have liked to have had, and we've tried to do those kind of things, but.
Like a skeleton template that you can get started.
Oh, actually, if you want a skeleton template to get started.
For Bootstrap? With Bootstrap?
This is a demonstration
there are a couple of them that are out there.
Producer.
I've used this. There's one called Strapped that I've used.
A really good one.
And the Joomstrap, was that?
Joomstrap by Philip Locke. He's in the UK.
You know what? I came across that site just recently.
Yeah, he's getting a ton of traffic right now. We're on his page as sponsors, and we're probably going to be up on his demo.
I came across that just like 2 weeks ago.
He has gotten a lot of traffic, and it's a really nice stripped down, just a real basic Joomla Bootstrap template, and he's also got some themes.
This is a demonstration of Ustream Producer.
The site is Joomstrap.
Joomstrap.com. JOO, yeah.
Yeah.
So, what are the it's all the classes in GUI and Bootstrap, so you'd have that, and then the B's 2.0 to B's 3 sort of classes.
Differences would help people understand.
Yeah. Yeah.
We actually, I love working with it from a development standpoint because I don't have to have myself.
This is a demonstration of Ustream Producer.
They just know they use these styles and the template will take care of it. So yeah, it's extremely helpful from a development standpoint.
Yep.
And then it's really a twofold approach because you've got to get the developers all on board with writing it, but you can't leave it like that because then every site would look the same because they'll all look just like Bootstrap.
Right, and you get then you have to get the developers to actually make them look different.
Correct.
And
A question like with the example of carousel.
yeah.
jQuery carousel.
Yeah.
This is a demonstration of Ustream Producer.
I'm not sure I follow you.
Well, you can set the different transitions in jQuery for how you're going to make it slide, fade, etc.
If you wanted to control that from a development standpoint, the component, you would have to write that into your JavaScript library. If you were going to leave that up to the template club, then you wouldn't even have to worry with it. And because if you don't care whether it flips or slides, then it's up to the template designer to actually create how that transition, or it'll fall back to the default.
This is a demonstration of Ustream Producer.
Yeah. Any other comments that you would make on?
I don't think so. It's a really great system to have at your fingertips.
Yeah.
And it provides for consistency because, again, your site won't look like everyone else's, but within your site,
it'll
will
look the
like
same
it belongs. And
in
so
the site.
you don't have any more of these third-party components that just get thrown in there, either on the admin or the front side, that look like, well, this doesn't match.
This is a demonstration of Ustream Producer.
Explain that they can customize it and make it look like their template, but people just slap the thing in there and don't touch it.
Well, and the problem is that they'd have to do it with yours, and then they do it with this person's, and then they have to, like, I've got to have one that works with Jom Social and Kunina and Easy Blog and Virtumart, and this other thing, and it's like, well, I got the 2 out of the 3, and then I'll have to run the rest or something if you're doing it. So, or else if you're doing it custom, then you've got to figure all of those out yourself, which is huge.
This is a demonstration
and
of
again,
Ustream Producer.
It'll have to work, Jom Social, if this is going to work, Jom Social is going to have to get on board with doing it, and which I think actually they already are, but just to use an example. So, okay, I think that's it.
Great job.
Okay, thank you.
Surveys.
Okay.
Right